Welcome to the Prolific Author Podcast. Let's face it, readers read fiction to feel emotion and be transported and transformed. In this ongoing digital revolution, where online marketing is always in flux, the only way to create a sustainable author business and live off your royalties is to write transformational stories, market at every stage of the author journey, and cultivate a loyal audience of readers. Fortunately, there's never been more opportunity to make a living as a fiction author. Hi, I'm Liesl Hill, USA Today bestselling author and story clarity coach. When I'm not dictating my own stories about dragons, serial killers, and dystopian worlds, I help other authors write their own transformational fiction, position them as bestsellers, and market them like pros. Join me on the podcast where I give writing tips, marketing how-tos, story advice, and interviews with other authors who are in the trenches just like you and making it work. We are prolific authors. Okay, we are here today with James Reid. How are you doing today, James?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good, good. Did you have a good Christmas and New Year's?
Yeah. I went over to my mom's for Christmas Eve and had a good dinner and hung out. And
Nice. Good. Well, usually I have authors start by saying, just tell everyone who you are and what you write.
I am JMD Reid. I write epic and dark fantasy. I have 2 series out on Amazon. One is my first epic fantasy series, which is called The Storm Below. That is a 5-book door stopper type series. And then I have what's currently called Secret of the Jewels, but is getting republished here in late February as Jewels of Illumination. And it's going to be the first of 13 books sort of in the same universe that are all going to be coming out this year. It's going to be followed up by Massive Illumination, which is a companion series that has characters that are kind of connected, but it's its own story. Either one can be read in either order, and it won't spoil the other one. Mm-hmm. And then coming in August will be Assassins of Illumination, which is a trilogy that kind of has characters from both series having their own adventure and kind of dealing with a fallout of the climax of Jewels of Illumination.
Nice. So you said 13 books this year. That sounds like a big year for you.
Yeah, well, 5 are already published, so we're republishing the Secret of the Jewels and calling it Jewels of Illumination. So there's all the series kind of have like a similar series title scheme, so that people be like, these are related stuff. Because my original series titles, they did not sound related. And we kind of, my team and I kind of figured out like maybe we should change the names of these and make them kind of have like something similar. So Jewels of Illumination, Mask of Illumination, Assassins.
Right. So do you have a big audience then who has read these and that's why you're expanding more?
Well, the hope is that we'll get a good audience. My self-publishing, I got some readers, but I'm not so good at the marketing. So I'm working now with Fall Rat Press, and they're planning on kind of going big and doing some AMS ads and other sort of ads, and to get the book out there, because they're positive it sells. I just am not reaching readers the right way. So
tell us a little bit more about them and what they do. You said that they just work with indie authors to help them market their books, pretty much.
Yeah. It's run by 2 guys, Jeff Kohanek, who is a best-selling indie fantasy author, and Michael Evan, who is a former editor, and he's like a publicist. So they started last year, I think around May, and what they do is they find indie authors that they think have really good books but are just not finding their audience, and then promoting, publishing them and promoting them and putting some good resources behind the marketing to get their name out there more. And I was approached last May when I met Michael. He had read my my book, and he really liked it, Above the Storm, which he said was his favorite book he read in 2020. So
nice.
Yeah. So he's a big supporter of me, and he wants to help me out. So he offered me a publishing contract. And
that's awesome.
I will admit I was a little hesitant because you hear horror stories of small press publishers,
Right.
But I watched the releases, and they were getting they're authors, like bestsellers on Amazon. So
Good.
it was.
Good.
I said, let's do it. I can't figure this out, so
Yeah.
I'd rather focus on writing than
Right.
figuring out AMS ads.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true of a lot of writers. And I mean, there are the horror stories. I think you have to be really, really careful. But as long as you did your due diligence and could see that they were delivering, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah. It's because, there's a lot of them, they prey on like new authors that they don't know anything.
Yeah.
It happened to my editor.
Oh.
She got, like, it really killed her confidence for a while, and I thought she would go back to writing, but she did, luckily, because she's got good talent. And but yeah, no, I met another author that he got, like, they were supposed to publish his book, and then they just dropped off the face of the earth, and they were a vanity press, so they charged him.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's the worst, the vanity presses.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad she went back to writing, though.
Yeah,
That's
new
good.
authors up. Yeah, here's a warning to new authors. If someone wants you to pay them to publish your book, it's a scam, and just walk away.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you get into writing, and especially into fantasy writing?
Well, I've always read books as long as I can remember, back to like my kindergarten days, just reading like Clifford the Big Red Dog, and I moved on to the Hardy Boys in elementary school, and I read some Jules Verne's, and then my uncle gave me The Hobbit when I was in the 4th grade. I was down in Davis, California, and we were at the Slide Hill Park pool of all places, and he's like, "Here, you might like this book." And so instead of swimming, which is something I rather liked doing when I was a kid, I was reading this book, about this hobbit going on this adventure with dwarves, and I fell in love with fantasy. And I tried to read Lord of the Rings, but in the 4th grade I was a little too young to really get Lord of the Rings. But
Yeah.
I had another attempt in the 6th grade. My uncle bought me like a box set for Christmas, and so I read that, and from there I just read fantasy with some sci-fi, but mostly fantasy from there on out. And I wanted to, by the time I was in junior high, like 7th grade, I was wanting to write my own stories and write my own fantasy stuff. So I was always writing like stories on notebook paper, and I mean, I must have started about 1,000 stories because I had ADD. I never finished anything back in junior high and high school, but I always wanted to be an author, and it always stuck in my head. And in my 20s, I got distracted with working and playing World of Warcraft. And so my 20s kind of just slipped away from me. But in my 30s, I kind of was, I got diagnosed with hypertension, which is high blood pressure. And so it kind of made me go like, well, I'm not going to live forever. If I'm going to do this writing thing, I should probably start doing it. And so this was 2013. I started trying to write like really hard,
Yeah.
It was really difficult to just force myself to sit there and write. And it took me a while, but I finally, over 2013, finally started writing a lot. And yeah, I've been writing more and more ever since, until now I ghostwrite for a living and publish my like fantasy books.
Nice. So you mentioned earlier that your high fantasy are kind of the door stopper variety. So what's your process? How do you get those written, and how do you keep yourself on track?
It's only the first series are door stoppers. I haven't done door stoppers since. It was I still feel scarred by reading that last book, which came out at 270,000 words for the rough draft. And it took me 4 months to write. And I remember I was in the middle of it going like, I'm never going to finish this novel. And it was soul crushing, because I saw how much I have my outlines I'm doing, and I'm like, and I just see how much it's going to take me to write this. And I'm just like, it's going to take me another 2 months. And, but I had to learn a lot. Like, they were my first novels that I wrote to completion. Above the Storm was my first novel I ever finished. And I had to learn a lot about how to plot stories, how to make them connect. I had to do so much rewrites on the series, especially Above the Storm. I had a lot of missing parts that were not there in the rough draft that I had to go and put back in. And, I had to had to gain confidence in my writing. And
Right.
and by the time I got to book 3, I had to learn how to stop writing my books in chronological order, and instead to like, because my characters all split up, and so it's hard for me anyways to keep the like arc momentum for a character. If I write like a scene from them, then I write a scene from someone else and a scene from someone, and they're all not really connected, and it's very easy to kind of lose the sort of, you know, building tension or building, you know, the character arc, you know, the, you know, getting their emotional journey straight. And so the moment I split the characters, I quickly realized I had a outline for the first time. I had to stop. Like, I had an outline. It was very rough. I knew like all the major points I wanted in the novel, but it was very like, it was like 10 bulletin points for, you know, a 150,000, 200,000 novels. So it was really just like the high points.
Right.
And so I had to figure out, you know, how the logistics of how characters get around. I had to, you know, I had to know when their storylines were affecting each other.
Yeah.
I had to figure out how to organize all that. And then I had to figure out how I had to put it all together so it would be chronologically but still have pacing, you know, as I'm jumping around from storyline to storyline. As I mean, I love Tolkien, but Tolkien, I mean, how he did his multiple storylines was he wrote off a book, and then he jumped over to the other characters, and he spent the other half of the book on the other storyline. And it's not
right.
I don't think modern audiences would appreciate that.
So when you say that you stopped writing it chronologically, do you then just focus on a single character at a time and write their whole story? And then
basically, yeah. So like I would have so, you know, you'd have like maybe 2 characters were doing something here, and there was another 3 characters. So initially I had sort of my villain POV, and that was a new character coming in because I could pretty much clean house in the villains at the end of book 2. And so, because I was moving on to a different stage in the story, and they weren't needed any longer. And it's not to call them villains. I should say it's antagonists, because I don't rarely write like real villains. They're more usually just people with conflicting goals. But on this time, like book 3 is all about a war. It's a sort of military epic fantasy. And so I wanted to have like the enemy general's POV. So obviously they're doing their own thing for a lot of the book. They have almost no direct interaction with any of my protagonist characters. But I thought it was good to show the war from their perspective. And then I had all my main characters. They were all together originally, but now I'm splitting them up into 2 groups initially. And so I had like 2 characters staying behind and 3 characters going off on their journey. And so, yeah, I just would write like you know, one character's storyline, like one arc and then another arc, and then but I still have to know like how they affected each other, because there were certain reasons, there's some magical stuff that like there was some amount of communication between the groups. So I did need to know like when certain events would happen that would impact the other storyline. So I kind of need to know that, and so it kind of determined like how I wrote, which ones I wrote. Like the one that is where the action's happening, the other storyline is reacting to it, I would write the one where the action is happening first, and then I can write the reaction better because I already knew what happened.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
But then as the book got on, like one of the characters that went off with the 3, they get captured and go taken off somewhere else, and then so then we had the 2 characters that stay behind. One of them leaves to go help them and joins like the other 2 characters, so they go off and do their own thing, and leaves this one character off, like sort of sticking around with the war part. And so it was like, yeah, so it was just characters moving around, shifting. I had to figure out like movement of ships and timelines, and it was I had detailed spreadsheets.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that. So are you just like a really heavy plotter now?
Now and so when I started writing like Secret of the Jewels or Jewels of Elimination, this is now going to be called, it's 2 character POVs. After that, I wanted to do a really more intimate, just 2 character POV series. So, and they're almost always together. If they're not together, they tend to be working towards the same goal. They're just off in different parts, because it's all like in basically one city. So there's not like a point where they're geographically separated.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So I was able to write that chronology, but the whole like doing the detailed arc plans I found was still very useful, where I found myself, I would have my story, the book outline, and then I would do like 4 or 5 detailed chapter outlines with the scene breaks and the emotional beats and then I would write that. And I found that because I already had this more detailed outline, which is something I found in the other series, I was able to write it a lot faster because I didn't have to.
Right.
I'd already thought of the connective tissues and the emotional stuff. So now I'm just basically fleshing out what I'd already figured out, and so it lets me not have to pause my writing to think about what are they going to do next, because I've already thought about what they're going to do next. But I did it in very basic ways where I don't have all the prose and the descriptions and the more emotional detail stuff. So I found it worked. And then after I'd write like those chapters, usually it was up to like whatever the next major story beat, where there'd be some sort of shift to the status quo. Mm-hmm. That would cause then I could sit and reflect on how my characters, went on that journey, what sort of emotional stuff happened, and then think about where they could go next. So it's kind of pantsing it, because I don't like when I do the book outline, I really don't have a good idea on the emotional outline, the emotional arcs, and there could be a lot of character conflict I could discover in writing their interactions that I might not have anticipated when I thought of the novel.
Right.
I'm able to like see problems more clearly when I'm in the moment for me. So it's like a hybrid pantsing outlining.
Yeah, I find that's true of, I mean, you have people who are just straight pantsers who don't want to outline, but even among outliners, I think you can only, I totally agree, outlining helps you to write faster. I think you put it perfectly, that you don't have to pause as much to think about it, but I think there's also always going to be some outline or some aspects that we always pants, whether it be conversations or extra things that we're adding in as we go because we didn't think of them, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've thrown out outlines because things really got off the books. Like Mask of Betrayal, which is Mask of Elimination, book 4. I couldn't find the ending, like how I wanted to end it. And I'm writing this book, and I'm getting closer and closer to the end. I'm trying to figure out, where to end the book at, and sort of what emotional, and sort of what's going to be like the climax of it, because it's the penultimate book, and I had all these ideas, and I couldn't get any of them to work. and so I'm trying to wrap up a love triangle, and so and it wasn't really much of a love triangle. It was more like, I came into the series, it's all written from one, so the entire series is just one character POV. That's how much I pared down after my epic one. I did a 2 POV series, and then I went to a single character POV next, just to really challenge myself. I think because it's a female character and it's not my strongest writing, so I wanted to challenge myself to do better.
Interesting.
And so there was I went into the series with her having 3 potential love interests, and I was going to just pants which one I felt writing the series that I was feeling the character was most connecting with. And I also had 2 different villain options. So I didn't quite know which. I had one that was going to be antagonistic from the beginning, but I had ideas that they might, halfway through the series, might go no, this other character is really worse, and that they have to team up after being enemies for the first half of the series, is an idea I had. And so I wasn't, and so at the end of book 4, I kind of had to pull the trigger on which one was going to be the ultimate, enemy, and who should be the ultimate love interest and stuff like that. And so I was okay, I kind of really had it all figured out at that point. So I was just still struggling to find the climax. And so I'm writing this scene. It's supposed to be just hey, I know you're into me, but, I like this other guy. And it was just supposed to be kind of just, stop having your hopes. It's not happening type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And instead, it went really dark as I kind of understood this character in this moment of everything I had written for 4 books on this character. It all kind of clicked into my mind, just who this character exactly was and why they were helping my main character. And it went really dark, and it provided my climax. Yeah. And it also provided the emotional arc of my main character in the next book.
Nice.
So yeah, it was, and I had that, and it was really in the moment of writing it that I discovered it. And I was kind of shocked. I'm sitting here going oh, this is happening, isn't it? I took a moment to pause in my writing to go like, oh, okay, this is, I've made some connections here I hadn't really thought about before, and I took a moment to think, do I really want to go with this impulse I just had? And I was like, no, I do. This is exactly like where I think the character would go as I'm here in the moment. I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Wow. That's kind of fun though when that happens, huh?
It's second time it's ever really happened to me where like something really just butted in on my idea and just said like, no, you're doing it wrong and this is what you got to do.
Yeah.
And it happened to me in book 5 of The Storm Below too, but
well, that kind of segues into something else I'd like to ask you, because you say you write dark fantasy, and I've kind of noticed that not everybody, even among authors, not everybody knows what dark fantasy is, but it's also, there's not like one hard and fast definition for it. So what is your definition of dark fantasy as you write it?
So it's not grimdark where it seems to be like, so like dark fantasy is more like, it's just kind of more grounded in the real world where things are not black and white, where your main characters have flaws, and where where I'm more than willing to tackle very kind of mature themes of like drug use and alcoholism and sexual assault. And so it's not like bright hope fantasy where things are for the most part like there's something you could like anyone of all ages could read like bright hope fantasy, I would say.
Right.
Whereas like or just like even not even that bad, but like so it's just a willingness to tackle some of the darker parts of the human psyche and to go into. But ultimately, I do prefer to have like kind of happier endings. So kind of they're not going to be downer endings for the most part. There might be some bad things are going to happen to characters that I like, and there's going to be grief and loss, but there's always kind of a note of, I would say they're dark. They're like, it's like grim dark, but I keep a note of optimism and hope in the story, that things can get better, that you can like get redemption, that people are really bad, but they're also can be really good. That potential to be both a saint and a devil are within every single one of us.
Right.
Is kind of a really big theme. So yeah. And so kind of to make things like to show the good stuff good, you have to really show the dark stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you on that. So
that's why I call it, and like that's
yeah, no, I just always ask people because everybody has a little bit of a different definition for what they think dark fantasy is, and I don't think any of them are right or wrong. I'm just always curious to see what people say.
Genre is a very nebulous thing to begin with, so
it is.
Especially when you start,
it really is.
Tearing it down. Yeah.
So you write under your initials, JM Reid, and why don't you tell us about how you decided to go with your initials instead of your full name?
Someone published as James Reid like 50 years ago, so I didn't want to have. So I was like, well, I have because my full name is James Michael Dean Reid, and so I was like, well, I can be JMD Reid and use all those initials and look all authorly. So I mean, like like J.R. or not Harry Potter. What is her name? She's J.K. Rowling, right?
J.K. Rowling.
She doesn't have a middle. She doesn't have a middle name. She just like. I wanted to like go by initials, but I was only like Joanna Rowling, so she invented like a K.
Yeah.
Just to give her an extra initial, because I don't know, it sounds authorly when you go by like your initials.
It does.
For some reason. Yeah.
It does. And so, was the other guy who published under that name? Was it the same genre?
No, it was like I don't remember. It was like nonfiction.
Oh, okay. And have you ever had anyone mix you up with him or anything like that?
Weirdly, I've had like Google, I think I saw like Google like has something where they just like track authors, and they have me mixed up with this guy, even going by my initials.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Amazon, like if I don't know if you've ever used like ACX to do audiobooks, but I will always find like James Reid's books because ACX goes by your like the name that your actual name, because like when you set up your account, And so like my legal name is James Reid, and so that's what they always search for, just by default, before you search for your book to claim the rights to it. And ACX, this is very authorly for people out there who don't know. So ACX is how you do audiobooks through Audible. Right. It's their website. It makes it really easy.
Well, but I think it's important for people to be like thinking about this when they think about what pen name they're gonna, publish under. And I mean, they might be small kind of first world problems, but they are things you have to deal with when you get into publishing. So
yeah, make sure no one else is published under your name. That's just, it's okay to use your real name, but just make sure no one else used your real name first.
Right. Exactly. All right. So, I mean, obviously you have 13 books coming out this year, and that's going to be kind of what you're doing for the foreseeable future. But after that, what other plans do you have? Will you keep writing fantasy?
Awesome. Of course. I don't know if I'll ever not write fantasy.
Yeah.
That's what I like. I have more stories planned in the Illumination universe, more with the characters. I created the universe with the idea that not only would it have like sort of a meta story of like all this stuff is building towards something, but that it's just a big world that I could put so many different smaller stories in that might just not have any real connection, but they're in the same universe and take place at about the same time, and you'll see a lot of the same timers. Like a lot of my short stories are set in different parts of the world, and they're kind of very foundational for a lot of the stuff that's in the main books. Like I explore ideas or come up with new ways to use the magic system.
Nice.
And I'm also working on a fantasy quest series. It's a bit more, not dark fantasy, but a bit more like regular fantasy. So it's kind of epic quest fantasy, something like David Eddings' Bulgaria is actually kind of something like that.
Okay.
And I'm writing book 3 of that. And as soon as I'm done with editing Assassins, I got to finish writing book 3 of Assassins. I just finished book 2 on Saturday. And so I got to write book 3, and then I got to edit them up to get them ready for release in August. And then I'm going to go on the series called Shadows of the Dragon, and it's going to be a long series. I'm not sure how many books yet. 7, 8, maybe 10.
Yeah.
We'll see. And it's more it's a lot of character POVs, but so far they're all staying together, so I haven't really had to do too much finagling with the timelines. And yeah, it's
will there actually be dragons in it?
Yep.
Good.
So the whole point is that dragons were finished, and so the main characters are a boy named Yudon and a girl named Voni, and they're from this little mountain village. And the girl Voni, her father is feared by everyone in the village because he is this sort of dark wizard that came to their village, right when she was a baby, and built some foreboding tower, and everyone in the village is scared of her. And because of that, they're all scared of her. And so Yudon's like her only friend. And anyways, her father is abusing her in preparation for a ritual. So she is like having sigils carved into her flesh. It's very terrible for her. And anyways, Yudon, like when the ritual happens in the beginning of book 1, Yudon goes up there and he's going to go save his friend, because he very much sees himself as like a hero out of a story. He wants to be like the knight that goes and saves the princess. It's very much what he wants to do. He's 16 and he likes the girl, and he wants, so he's like, I'm going to go, and there's some crazy stuff going on in her father's tower, and I'm going to go stop it. And he interrupts a ritual to put the soul of one of like these dragons into her body as part of like a plan to resurrect them for the goals of a group called the Apostasy. And so Voni ends up with the soul of Lady Pestilence in her, who is one of these like 6 dragon lords. And she's like in a fight to like keep her body, because the soul inside of her wants to possess it. And they're now on like a journey to try to find a way to get it out of her. And they're being hunted by sort of a wizard warrior named Ron. She's like been tasked to track them down. And so the first book is them kind of running from her and their little adventures. And then it just sort of builds from there as they get to learn more about why this dragon was put in her and what the goals of the villains are, what the stakes are, and we get to meet some more characters and travel around this world that I hope will be interesting. I'm putting a lot of interesting elements, like strange stuff that's just not possible in our world, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. And
Good.
30,000 words into book 3, so
yeah, that sounds like fun. That sounds great. So
yeah,
what advice would you give to authors who are still aspiring and just trying to get started?
You need to write. It doesn't matter what it is you're going to write, just write something. You don't ever have to show it to anyone, but you can't be any good at writing unless you practice it. Even if you have really good natural talent for it, you need to train it. You need to learn the discipline to sit down and write. You should, if you're not able to write every day, you need to just find an hour every day to write. And if you want to be an author and you want to get words published, you could do a lot with an hour a day. If you can write a book in 3 months with an hour a day writing.
Yeah. Those are wise words. Yeah, for sure. So, where can people find you and your work if they want?
Yes, they can. You can find me on my blog, which is jmd-reid.com. I'm on Facebook under JMD Reid, and also I have a fan group called Fantastic Worlds of the Imagination, where we post fun stuff every day, like caption pictures or polls. Right now we're having a poll on what's faster, a European swallow or an African swallow, to answer the Monty Python question. And so we'll see what people think is the faster. And so we just have fun and a place to share my writing. And I'm also on Twitter at JMD Reid. Great.
Well, I will link to all of those in the show notes. Thank you so much for talking to us today. It was really fun, and it'll be fun to see where your books go once they get republished and everything.
Yes, thank you. It was really great.
Me again. Before you go, if you found value in this episode, I would love it if you could leave me a review. Reviews are the best way to show your appreciation and help others find this podcast. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your favorite social media network, and tag me at LK Hill Books. Remember, the world needs your stories. Only you can change someone's heart with your fire-breathing dragons, your mind-blowing mysteries, your epic romances, and your intense thrillers. So join the revolution and be a prolific author.